Happy Wednesday, my friend. It is so good to see you here today. I wanted to say a special hello to everybody who's already blowing up the chat, like Hannah and Baylin and Muhammad and Alexandra and Giacomo and Jeff. So good to see you. If you're new here, we're a really fun bunch, as you can see. That is what the chat is for. Let us know where you're coming in from. Perhaps what is in your cup. I am not weird. I am a limited edition coming in from Austin, Texas with some green tea. So I'd love to know where you're coming in from. Hey, Alan, so good to see you. And Alexandra coming in from Johannesburg. Whew. We are glad that you are safe and sound from those rolling blackouts. It's so good to see you. I'm really excited about this topic today as we kind of welcome everybody in here from all over the world, like Santina from Dublin and Jeff coming in from New York, because I think that this is a global issue that we're all having. I know sometimes we can talk about subjects where it's like, this really only affects people in business, or this really only affects people in marketing or sales. This is something that affects everyone. And so that's why I was excited to really dig in today and to bring on a guest that I thought was one of those people that just is an expert on this subject when it comes to marketing yourself and capturing other people's time and attention. Easily one of the most valuable things right now. Everybody's time, because nobody has enough of it. I know you're super busy. You have a lot going on in your life, and I doubt you have a lot of extra time on your hands. So you might want to think to yourself, how can I optimize my own time or help catch other people's times when I know they don't have a lot of it? So I'm really excited to have Ron Tite joining us today, because in addition to being an author and a speaker, he is a founder of an amazing agency called Church and State, where he was named one of the top 10 creative Canadians by Marketing Magazine. He works with amazing brands like Air France, Hershey's, Johnson & Johnson, Evian. The list goes on, but let's just say he knows his stuff. He knows what he's talking about. He's working with some real great people and brands. So I'm really excited because I think he can help us navigate this dichotomy between advertising, building content, talking about ourselves, our companies, what we do, and just how all of those things mix together. He's actually written 2 books. The first one came out a couple years ago, back in 2016. It was called Everyone's an Artist, or at least they should be. And then his follow-up that came up in 2019, Think, Do, Say: How to Seize Attention and Build Trust in a Busy, Busy World. So I think that's something we could all use a little bit of. If you're new here, this is an interactive conversation between me, you, and Ron. So if you have questions, if you have comments, if Ron says something, if I say something that you're like, oh, I have another follow-up question, Kim, or why didn't you ask this? Or how about this? That's what the chat's for. We will be monitoring this the whole time. So if you see my eyeballs go from here to here, to here, to here, it means I'm looking at your questions so that Ron and I can discuss them with you in real time. So we're all in the same cozy coffee shop together. So I hope that Ryan and Jim and Giacomo and John will join me in raising their cups and welcoming Ron to our coffee chat.
Well, thank you, Kim, and hello, everyone. I'm going to raise a glass and then I've got one here, and I'm going to have other.
You're like me, multiple cups by the end of the day.
Yeah, they just line up, and then it goes. The beverage progression is like espresso to latte to coffee to water to Diet Coke to Scotch. That is really kind of, if you look at the day, that's how it all breaks out.
It's the evolution of beverages.
Yeah, totally.
A tale as old as time.
Yeah, a tale as old as time. What song is what movie is it from?
Beauty and the Beast, obviously. Ron, is this our first rodeo?
Yeah,
I don't think so. Not around these parts. No, tale as old time. That's great. Okay, I'm so excited for you to be here because I've Google stalked you in like a non-creepy way, in a fun way. And you've just done a lot of incredible things over the course of your career. And I think out of all the nuggets that I took away from your website and podcasts that you've been on and your podcast was I really loved this phrase that came up in a number of different places called winning people's time. Not like capturing, not buying, but winning. So I'm just to kind of nerd out for a second. How did you pick that phrase, win, versus some of the other language that we hear more commonly in the marketing world?
Well, because I think that winning is in respect to a competition, and the problem that a lot of organizations have, that a lot of leaders have, that a lot of brands have, is that they have narrowly defined competition. And it's if you believe that people used to vote with their wallets, but now they vote with their time. Well, how do you win the time? You understand that you're competing for that time with other people and with other things. Now, most brands think like, oh, we're competing against these three other people in our category, and that's the same competition. Like, no, you're competing against the internet. You're competing against the internet. And the if let's say you're a retailer and you're looking to put out your holiday wish list or whatever, well, you're not just competing against other retailers, but I need to invest the time in order to look into that, to be interested in that. And I got YouTube and I got TikTok and I got Instagram and I got my kids and I got a million other things that are really trying to capture and win my time. The other reason is that I think people for too long focus too much on the standing out. How do you cut through the clutter, Kim? And that doesn't win people's times over the long haul. That may capture their attention, which is why the subhead of the book was like capture attention and build trust, because it's easy to get somebody to turn their head. It's easy to get somebody to look in your direction. Go naked. Just go naked. That you are going to get people to look. But that doesn't build trust. That doesn't drive business. That doesn't really get people to win people's time. And so you got to be just better than that. And so I just thought winning the time is the best way to put it.
Well, and I think what's interesting, to your point of you can always get people's attention, but is that authentic? So yeah, we can go like streaking through the quad.
Yes, good.
Okay.
Hey, honey.
We'll just have movie innuendos just kind of slipped in throughout the end. Maybe we'll make it a contest. No, but you can go streaking and get people's attentions, but also is that authentic to your brand? I think what a lot of agencies did, not to point fingers, but I think what a lot of people did in the early 2000s was this like the flash mob, the crazy, and I don't know if a long-term, when you look at like a long-term brand structure, if that's really authentic. And then same with us as people. So when you're working with these various brands or even individuals that you kind of talk to, CMOs, et cetera, how do you, I guess, balance the flash, cool marketing, it's edgy, with that sort of authentic long game that people need to play?
It's a great question. The first thing you need to do is you need to build the foundation. You need to understand two things. One is that, to use a kind of a manufacturing metaphor, that there are two sides to the automotive manufacturing world. One is the assembly line. And so the assembly line is where you make your money. You make your money because everybody has very clearly defined roles. It is repeatable behavior. You know how long it takes somebody to do a certain task. If they do their job, they put it on, then they give it to the next person. They do their job. And when you get repeatable behavior all down the line, you get expected cost, you get expected margin, and guaranteed quality. So it's an amazing way to run a business. So that's the first part of it, that all of us should be working on an assembly line at some point in our day, doing tasks that, in my business as an agency way, you kill it and bill it. Kill it and bill it. Go get it done, get it out the door, right? You know how to do this. You don't need to, there's no, collaboration on the assembly line. Nobody pushes a rig bread button and goes, I don't know, Jimmy, let's blue sky this a bit. No, you put your head down, you do your job, you get it out the door, kill it and bill it. The flip side of that is that within the automotive world is that there are concept cars. And concept cars are done off the assembly line. There's no hope that these things are ever going into production. You just do it to do it. and maybe you can learn something from the concept car and go like, oh, this gas cap, this is cool. We're going to integrate that into the assembly line. So what we need to do as marketers and as people is we have to clearly understand, is this an assembly line activity or is this a concept car? Because if it's an assembly line activity, then we need to have a clear purpose behind what that activity is. We clearly need a path to efficiency. So what are we going to do? Is this how do we make it better and better and better and better? If this is concept car, which is totally cool because we need that, you're going to do a TikTok strategy. Okay, great. We're going to try this out. First, know that at most 10% of your budget should be allocated to concept car activities. Secondly, the concept car activities have to reinforce a purpose. You can't just be running willy-nilly all over the place with random stuff. That's not being a pro. That's what amateurs do. Amateurs throw stuff at a wall and see what sticks. Pros know clearly and are focused by their sense of purpose. And the concept car should be additional activities which reinforce that sense of purpose. And there's no hope this is ever going to the production line. I get so depressed when I hear this, right? Where it's like, we want to do something that's never been done before. And while we're doing that, we need to know what the metrics for success are.
Oh my gosh, Ron, have you been listening to my conference calls this week? This has been coming up quite often.
Doesn't work that way. If you want it, it's never been done before. There are no possible performance metrics that exist for that activity. So just do it to do it and see what you learn.
Well, it's funny, as a fellow marketing agency person, not only do I live by that, but I started to do that in my personal life. So similarly, how you're saying take 10%, like I have a budget for learning. It's for courses that I take. It's for conferences that I go to, because I think I'm always thinking ahead to the future, that even though it might not be a task or something that I'm doing now, not to say, oh, I'm going to get into NFTs and blockchain, for an example, but I might join a webinar that explains that, just because I think taking that 10% and saying this could all be trash, like this concept car could never be reproduced and it's trash. But I don't think the learning is ever the issue. That I think people don't do enough, actually.
I would agree. I'd agree. I have an interesting perspective in that I was a professional comedian for 20 years. And while kind of working in advertising. And so there's a lot that I take from the stand-up world that I apply to certainly into speaking, but into creative development and stuff as well. And what's always great about, what I always loved about the stand-up world was this idea of the open mic night. And that you go and you do stuff, and it's not, you have 3 bullet points on a page and that's it. And you just go and see what's there. So within speaking, I do that now, where I develop what I call the new 2, which is like, there's a new 2 minutes, because there's no such thing as an open mic night for speakers. And if someone's paying full fee to have me there, they should have the gold, the good stuff. So based on stuff I've read or what I'm like, I'll go like, oh, there's an interesting thought here, or something just happened in the news. I'm going to try this out. And I'm just going to try 2 minutes of it embedded within 58 other minutes of proven material. And then see, is there anything there? Like, how did the crowd react to that? Or did I feel comfortable? Is it in the right place? And sometimes that's, quite frankly, been like, we'll never speak of those 2 minutes again. That did not go well. But other times you're like, oh, that 2 needs to be a 10. There's way more there that we need to explore. And I get excited for that. And I think Jeffrey's got a great point there. Is it the time budget and a finance budget? Like, how much are you budgeting between the 2? And so within, 10% of your financial budget within a speech, it's 2 minutes of 60 or, whatever. But have those clear ideas of like, I'm only spending this much time on this concept car activity. And that's it.
How does that work then? Obviously the brands that you've worked with in the past, whether it's Hershey's, which we mentioned before, Evian, some of these brands have been around for like a really long time, and they might have some values that are maybe something that was set 30 years ago or something that was set 20 years ago. So how have you instructed them, or maybe what's a common mistake that you see when it comes to marketing? If somebody's, even if it's people joining us who have their own companies. They're
Yeah.
not necessarily Hershey or Evian, but maybe they've been doing something the same way for kind of a long time. How can you rejigger that in a way that still keeps those core values, but maybe market it or reflects it to other people in a new way?
Yeah, it's a great question. And there's really two challenges that come with that. The first is this is always the way we've done it. And you know what? It's the this is how we show deodorant. You do it on a blue piece of paper, like it's been done that way for 50 years. And it's either that or we're a startup or we're an age-old organization and we're throwing everything out and we're starting over, which is not the way you want to do it either. So I think is this idea of aligning what you think, what you do, and what you say. So on the think side, this is a sense of corporate purpose. Now, purpose, the biggest problem I see with purpose right now is that people are using purpose as a proxy for cause. Cause is not purpose. So when someone says, what is our purpose in the world? Our purpose is to pursue gender equality in the boardroom. You sell cars. What? And I'm not saying, of course, you should pursue gender equality in the boardroom. That's not corporate purpose. That's maybe how you pursue your corporate purpose. That's a value that you think is important. That is something that you need to pursue. But that's not corporate purpose. So people they're faking their way through purpose by just attaching it to the latest cause. And that's not corporate purpose. Corporate purpose should be a brand belief statement, which is we believe this, so we do this. And the so needs to connect what you fundamentally believe and where you make your money. We believe in gender equality, therefore we sell cars. Doesn't work. That does not work. So for those at home, it's spelled P-A. No. So that's the first step. A corporate purpose and a brand belief needs to believe in something that goes beyond what you sell, but be strategically linked to what you sell. The second thing is that purpose really shouldn't change a heck of a lot. The J&J Credo, which guides that organization, Johnson & Johnson Credo, I think was written in 1954. These are the principles and values of the organization that exist to this day. So that sense of purpose should not change. The second thing is that sense of purpose should guide your innovations. It should guide the new activities by saying, what else can we do to reinforce that belief? So, and a quick metaphor here is for you basketball fans, go Raptors, go. I'm in Toronto. But if you like basketball, when you're dribbling down the court, I did a phys ed degree in like the 40s. But if you're dribbling down the court and you stop, well, you have a pivot foot. And your pivot foot is the foot that anchors you to the floor. The other foot, you can step this way, that way, this way, that way. You can decide what direction you're going to go in. But your pivot foot keeps you anchored so you're not just running willy-nilly all over the court. And so this is what purpose does for you. Purpose says we're going to anchor you in this set of beliefs. Now, we can explore a different direction to go in to reinforce that belief, but we're going to stay focused on this opposed to running willy-nilly. So that's how we balance those two worlds, which is, hey, you've believed in this, and we're not going to come in and tell you to change your fundamental beliefs. This has existed since the 50s or the 80s or whatever, but there are new contemporary ways that you can reinforce that belief. There are new platforms that you can expose, which will get you to new audiences so that you can, and this is the third part, which is the say, which is, this is what we fundamentally believe in. This is what we do to reinforce that belief. And here's how we're going to talk about it. Because our ideas and our passions and our sense of purpose that's been around from the 50s is adopted by other people depending how we communicate it. And growth comes from getting more people on your side. We should all be signing up for growth.
100%. And to Jeff's point, when we're thinking about the think, do, and then the last part, say, when you're saying the say part, is that just how you're talking about what you're doing? Or do you advise, whether it's individuals or business owners or people that work in a corporation, to actually publish that somewhere on a website or online where other people can see it as well?
Yeah, the say part really, when we, and the kind of the speech in the book are kind of the corporate theater version of that. But when we work with clients, we've just won part of the Google business, so we're working with Google right now. Walmart is a big client. And we look, the say part, we kind of go through a process to say, okay, this is what you fundamentally believe. This is what you do to reinforce the belief. Here are 10 other things you could do to reinforce the belief. Now, how do we talk about it? How do we communicate that? Now, that starts with, for maybe smaller organizations, the name. So you can see the name of my agency is Church and State, which for those who may not be, close to the world of media and advertising, it used to be the separation of church and state, of advertising and editorial. And now we fundamentally believe is the unification of church and state. So our name tells you what we fundamentally believe, that we believe there's this gray area between advertising and content. So our name checks that box, but other names, you're like, this name is out of sync with what you fundamentally believe and do. So we got to change that. Or your name is fine, but man, this color palette doesn't reflect that, or this logo doesn't reflect that. So we start there. Then we get into what we call a brand narrative. And the brand narrative is the thing, it tells the story of that brand. And that, once you've written that can be repurposed as a website, as a video, as a TV series, as a million different things. But every brand narrative should answer these 5 questions. Every brand. They should answer, what's going on in the world? What problem does that create? What do we fundamentally believe about that problem? How do we solve that problem? And why should you believe us? Every brand needs to answer those 5 questions. The only question that brands and organizations and people typically answer is the what do we do about it? We're a SaaS, we're a software as a service company that allows people to, like, what? You just jump right to the do of what you do, and I have no context for what you're talking about or what problem you solve. And so it's really like, what's going on in the world? And to give you an example for Church and State, what's going on in the world? Man, people are bombarded by advertising from every possible direction. They have no idea what's advertising, what's content. Okay, what problem does that create? The problem that creates is they don't know where to look and they don't know who to trust. Oh, right. What do we believe about the problem? We believe that people used to vote with their wallet. Now they vote with their time. Oh, okay. So what do we do to solve that problem? Well, we simply help organizations, brands, and individuals win that battle for time by creating communications that are compelling enough and interesting enough and informative enough to win the battle. And why should you believe us? Well, these are all our clients, and I'm 100 years old, so I've been doing this a long time.
You're a history book, and that's the reason why.
Right.
Okay, well, I'm glad you brought up Google, because Liz also brought up Google in a different area. But I think this also touches, when you're talking about what's happening in the world right now, I think this also touches a little bit upon like that quiet quitting that seems to be like everywhere right now. Quiet quitting.
Yeah.
Which I really view as employers have lost the attention and the trust and the relationship with employees. Because if you have a happy employee and you're a leader and you're a good leader, people will follow you straight off the cliff. I mean, They'll just march straight off the cliff with you. I've done it. I've had bosses where I'm like, you're going into battle, I'm right there with you, even though I might not have anything personally to gain from that. So what do you think for people that might be in positions that they have employees or have people that are working under them? Should they, as a leader, let people, in this case, to Liz's point, explore what a dream job or a new position or a new maybe project or area that they want to work on? Or do you think that's kind of getting into, I don't want to say HR territory, but it's getting off the big goal, which is, whatever the mission of the company is or your exact task is?
Yeah, there's a couple of things there. One, the comments I make about the Google program will be as an outsider because it's not something that we touch on or consult on.
Right.
But I'm happy to comment on it, but it's not an informed insider view on that. I would never share that on behalf of Google. But so
not
there's
without scotch.
yeah, exactly. So there's a couple of things there. One is that, we've heard a lot of talk about quiet quitting and the Great Resignation. I think what's worse than the Great Resignation is the Great Resignation. And that is, there are 2 definitions to resignation. One is, a reaction to an unfavorable situation, which is, this sucks, I quit, I'm out of here. The other definition of resignation is way worse, though, and that is someone who has simply resigned. And it is not, and I think that is a greater epidemic that we're facing now than the actual resignation, where someone is resigned to just doing the same old thing over and over and over again. And it's not a reaction to an unfavorable situation. It's an acceptance of it. And that's way more dangerous for business. So how do you ensure that employees don't get resigned before they get resigned? And that is, can you formally put structures in place to say, we allow you to pursue your passions? Yeah, you need margin to do that, so that you're paying somebody 100% salary to work 80% time. Yeah, so you need margin, and you need profitability, great profitability, in order to do that. And not all organizations, have the flexibility of being able to do something that robust. The second thing that you can do, though, is that you can allow people to pursue some sort of side hustle, that they can pursue interests and passions and things like that, and look to see, hey, do you want to bring this inside? When I used to be ECD at Havas, an international agency, and because I was doing a lot of speaking and comedy and stuff, I started this like weird business on the side, with a friend of mine who was running the business on a daily basis. And the partners of that agency said, don't have him work from home, have him bring it inside our office. We can resell this service. So they embraced the idea of like, oh, Ron has this other expertise that doesn't fit neatly within our thing, but we can certainly use that. So you can embrace allowing people to do that. I think more importantly, and certainly the understanding that great thinking comes from exposing ourselves to things that are outside of our quote unquote office, like art and music and all those sorts of things. The last thing I'll say about it, though, is that, a lot of organizations spend a lot of time on CX, customer experience, and there is no CX without EX. And you really need to look at your EX. And I find you will make greater strides in creating fulfilling employment. And that it doesn't necessarily mean that's people doing a side hustle, or that's people taking a Friday afternoon off to do a thing. Here's what meaningful employment is for most people. It's not the ping pong table. It's not the drinks after work. Meaningful employment is, I totally understand what this place stands for, and I clearly see that I have a role to play in it and bring it to life. This is important, and I'm important because I have a role to play in it. Now, sometimes senior leadership gets together and they create corporate purpose and they do all these things, and it's like, it's our North Star, it's our BHAG, it's our mission, it's our vision, it's our purpose, right? There's 800 different terms, and people are going, I don't have an MBA. What the hell? I don't know. Could someone just tell me what to do? So we need to clearly and simplify what this organization fundamentally believes in. And then secondly, if they understand it, but they don't see their role in it, then that means they're insignificant to the organization. They have no value whatsoever. And so it's a JOB. It's a JOB, and people need JOBs. But you know what? When another JOB that's going to give me more, allow me to work less, I'm gone. I'm out the door. And so we need to clearly articulate to people, this is what we stand for, over and over and over and over and over again. And this is where we see you having a role and bringing it to life. Now, if somebody says, I got this great passion and I can apply that to this purpose, whoa, that's even better. That's something you want to embrace. So I think it's that pursuit of meaningful employment, which is way more important.
Well, and I love this point, of getting everybody in the organization on the same page, not just the C-suite who are putting out these missions and North Stars and BHAGs and these big goals. And if you are, to Kimberly's point, meaningful employment is one of the most amazing things, not only for your employees, but also ultimately for the customers, because happy employees make happy customers and consumers. But I love, Hannah's point here, which is, if you're listening to you right now and you're kind of thinking to yourself, man, Ron is making some really good points, and I think perhaps my team or my organization as a whole has sort of maybe lost its way just a wee bit. Do you have some sort of tactical tips or advice that people can use to kind of herd in the cats a little bit more on their individual teams, or maybe re-energize them around if they've kind of started to get, to your point, that a little bit of that resigned feeling?
Yeah, there's a couple of things you can do. One, and I'm not a spiritual person at all, but there is a something that we all know, I think, for those who have spent any time in a spiritual house, whatever your spiritual house of choice is. I'll just use church as the default. People don't go to church to be converted. They go to be reminded. They know it all. They go back once a week to be reminded of it. So I remember when there's a great stand-up bit of Steve Harvey going to Michael Jackson and saying, you got to get your ass back to church, right? So like you got to come back and you need to reestablish those connections with the purpose. That's what you all fundamentally believe in it. So that's the first thing you can do. Second thing is you need to be able to give people the chance to vent about why they've strayed or where they've strayed. And so you can have those conversations, especially now that people are kind of in this post-pandemic environment. People want to talk. Oh man, do they want to talk about the last 2 years? And so you got to give them that opportunity to say, like, what really frustrated you about that, and what did you love about that? Out of that, you will develop great stories. And you need to allow people to share those stories so that stories, the key stories, become repeatable. So we leaders think, but why don't they understand the purpose? I start every offsite with a 10-page deck that goes over, this is our mission, this is our vision, this is our North Star, this is that, right? People need stories so that they can understand not only the sense of purpose, but that they see it in action. They see examples of it in action. I used to be the creative director on Dell, for example. And you could go into anybody, and I mean anybody at any level in that organization and go, hey, how'd this company start? And they'd go, oh, well, you don't know? When Michael Dell was 19 years old at the University of Texas, he started building computers in his dormitory because he found that people were paying for parts that they didn't need. And so he customized computer, right? So everybody knew the story. But more importantly, that story was the foundation for everybody's actions, because all they wanted to do was live up to the actions that he lived up to in that origin story of, eliminating the middleman, about being responsible with people's money, about, building customized computers so that people didn't pay for the parts they didn't need. And that infused the entrepreneurial attitude. So we need to share more of those internal stories. And I don't remember the writer who articulated it this way, but this is not my thought, but that we typically share 3 types of stories in organizations. One, we share stories to the outside world, to prospects and clients. When this happened, we helped this person out. The second type of story you tell is the stories inside one another. When Sheila did this, I felt special as her colleague, and we need more of that. The third type of story is the story that we tell ourselves. And often people need to hear those 2 other types of stories so that when it comes down to them telling themselves the story they tell themselves is, oh, I'm totally cool with this. I totally understand I understand what the sense of purpose is. I see that I've got a role. I've got this. This is no big deal. And if I don't have it, you know what? It's a one-off. It's a weird thing because normally I'm well prepared for this and the organization has my back. Compared to the story that a lot of people tell themselves, which is, why am I always stuck with this? Why don't I have the tools I need? Why doesn't management understand where I'm going? And they end up in this spiral of death where there just is this horrible story that they continually tell themselves. And then when someone goes, how about this? And they go, yeah, I'm out of here.
And it kind of touches on Jeff's point on, if you do want to rewrite your story or your narrative that maybe you're telling yourself, how do you have like a quick tip or something that you offer, because I think that we can all work on stories, whether we're just graduating from college and we're going, I'm entering the work world and who am I and what the heck do I do? Versus if we have been in the workplace for decades and we're saying, well, who am I now in this sort of changing world? Do you have maybe a question that you yourself kind of, Ron, comes back to every year to try to re-answer or re-update your own internal story?
I certainly do that. I certainly revisit that purpose on a yearly basis or on an ongoing basis. But when I left Havas, remembering I was a creative director who cranked out 30-second TV spots for years. And that was glory, traveling all over the globe, producing TV. Amazing, really fun. But there was a point I was like, I don't think this is the best way to solve people's problems anymore. And so I had to leave. But remembering that the brand that was attached to my forehead said, guy who does 30-second TV commercials. And so I realized that when I was starting my own agency, I did so with the promise to myself that I would not work with anybody I'd worked with before. And I would not work with any clients I had worked with before. Because when I walk into Kraft or Volvo and go, remember me? And they go, you're the 30-second TV commercial. And I go, yeah. But now I got something different. They're like, what? So I knew that I had to create an entire new perspective. And I took it back to the studs, because I'm a stud. No, that's I took the house back. The house needed to be renovated, but I need to go back to the studs. What is the foundation here? And then we can apply the walls and the wallpaper and the paint and everything else to go along with it. But it was really, I got to take it back to the studs. And every once in a while, you got to take it back to the studs.
No, I love that. And I feel like that's something that's a really good foundational question that we can all copy and ask ourselves, whether it's every 6 months or every year. I think that's a really valuable framework for us.
And especially that people part, right? Because what we typically do is we go, I'm just going to work with these 5 people and we're going to start something new. And the line that I kept repeating myself was, the band always sucks when it gets back together. We're going to get the band back together. The band sucks when it gets back together. It always sucks. No one wants that. Why? Because the band existed within a certain time where that person played the keyboards and that person played the electric guitar, and you all had roles. And getting every single person in that band to change what they do on a daily basis is really, really difficult because you're so dependent on those shorthands. And so I had a partner at the agency who I absolutely adored working with. And he was a really great friend and a really great, wonderful colleague that I had a lot of great work with. And everyone assumed that we were going to start our own thing together. And I just thought, no, I can't do that because I don't know where I'm taking this. And I don't want to have him to force into, need to find his new instrument and I need to find my new instrument. And then at a later date, maybe we can jam together. That'd be great. But right now I got to learn a new instrument and I got to learn that on my own.
I would like to see the Spice Girls get back together. That's my one.
Really
I think we could all agree that would be great.
It would be good. It would be very, very good.
Be good for all of us. Okay. This is the part where we just flat out blatantly copy all your homework with these speed round questions. So
okay, sure.
Are you good with that?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, go for it.
Okay. What is something that you have started using lately or doing lately that you absolutely love, recommending to everyone? We want to know what that is too.
Roger Martin's new book called The New Way to Think. Fantastic book. He is, I think, the foremost management strategy thinker in the world right now. And he was the former dean of the Rotman Business School, HBR contributor. New Way to Think. It's an incredible book that really relooks at strategy in a whole new, and it brings strategy back to the basics that everybody should be using strategy for.
And is it for individuals or like if you run a company?
Both.
Okay. Wow.
A new way to think.
Okay.
Yeah.
A new way to think. I like that. Okay. What is something that you have decided that you are going to learn more about in the next year? Could be anything from like a language to, like I had mentioned, NFTs and blockchain. But is there something that you kind of have pinpointed as like, yeah, I need to learn a little bit more into that?
Tennis.
Tennis.
Seriously, you know why? Because I feel like between the speaking and the agency and the writing that I get so consumed that I actually need to learn a skill that's not associated with business. And because my wife loves it, it's like, oh, this is, something that we can share. I think that, I think I need a different outlet. And so I've kind of said, that's what I'm going to do.
Pickleball is very big here in Texas. I don't know if that's big where you are, but it's like mini tennis.
My wife's name is Christy Pickles. No word of a lie.
Wow.
We should look into
Should she be
pickleball.
playing pickleball?
I think she
Miss
should.
Pickles playing pickleball?
That's a natural. Yeah. I don't know why she's not.
That's a natural tie-in. All right.
Yeah.
We gotta figure that out in a bigger way. Okay, I have this theory that, we all have heard the saying that you are the culmination of the 5 people that you spend the most time with. But I have this theory that now that we have these crazy things in our pockets all the time, that we are not just the 5 people that we physically spend time with, but the 5 people that maybe we follow or we see their updates on LinkedIn or Instagram or TikTok or any of these other channels. So I'm curious for you, are there some accounts or people or even brands who you follow on any of these social media channels that you just feel like kind of light you up or bring knowledge or positivity into your world?
I think there's that young farmer with the Emmanuel, the emu. I don't know if
The
I
emu
can't.
on TikTok. That's
Yeah,
going
yeah,
on
right. Yeah, it's on
TikTok.
Instagram and TikTok. But like Emmanuel, don't you dare, Emmanuel. So that just brings a smile to my face every day because it's also something I can share with my kids that they kind of
Yeah.
get a rise over.
We have to find out her handle so that other people can follow it.
Yeah,
I
I've got it
don't
here
remember the
somewhere.
handle off the, I don't remember
Emmanuel,
off the
if
top of my
anyone's
head.
got it, yeah.
Yeah.
But there's people, like Anne Hanley and Leanne Davey and Scott Stratton and Mitch Joel and Scott McCain and Alan Stein Jr. Like there's just so many great thinkers out there that I look to for inspiration. But the one that I thought I would mention is Paul Taylor from Adweek, and not Adweek, WEEK, WEAK. And it's a parody account. And I pulled one of the lines. So this will give you a little bit of an example. And it's always breaking. Client challenges agency to do TikTok video that doesn't look like an ad, yet demands that there be a prominent shop now for exciting deals, CTA. And so it's always these breaking now. So this is why I think this is important. One, because we need business relevant content that is based in humor in the middle of our feed. But more importantly, if you really want to get an honest assessment of your business, if you want to pick apart the weaknesses of your business, of your process, of your product, everything, go hire a stand-up comedian and say, do a 30-minute set on our organization. You need an outsider who looks, and this is why humor is really, really important. Humor is important because if I go into a client and go, I think you should look at it and do it this way, and they go, no, I'm not going to do that. There's only one way to do it. I've been in this business 25 years, right? They do that whole thing. But if I can get them to laugh at something about the organization, all I've done is I've said, aha, I got you to see it from this perspective. You said you couldn't see it from any other perspective except the one that you had for the last 25 years. You just proved to me by laughing that you have the ability to do that. You saw it from a humorous angle. Now that I got you open to seeing it a different way, I'm going to come at it from this perspective, which is a strategic perspective or a creative perspective. So humor forces people to look at something in a way that they've never, ever looked at it before. And when they laugh, they show you that they've done it. And so I think it's really, really critical.
I love that. I thought you at first you're talking about Adweek, like WEEK, but this almost sounds like the Onion. I don't know if you've ever read the Onion,
it is the onion of business. Totally.
It's the onion of business. I love that. Okay. This might sound weird, but around these parts, we love homework. We're a little nerdy in that way. But if you could give all of us joining here, David and Renee and Jim and Saroni, if you could give us all a homework assignment for this week that we had to do over the next couple days, could be read a certain article, could be listen to a podcast, could be ask ourselves a certain question. What would be the homework assignment that you would give us?
I would tell you to watch 2 things. And then if you want to geek out more, geek out more.
Okay.
There's so much that we as business leaders and as marketers and as thought leaders can learn from a guy named Bo Burnham. Bo Burnham was a YouTuber who started as a YouTuber, who grew that business to a place that he was doing soft seater tours. So the business grew tremendously, meant he had to change his role, didn't like the role, quit. and then over the pandemic completely reinvented himself. So you have to watch two things. One is Make Happy, which is the special that he basically quit stand-up comedy at the end of. So you got to watch that. And then the second thing is you need to watch Inside, which is him completely reinventing himself, of coming up with something completely different. It's such an absolutely brilliant special where he comments it, like the song called That Funny Feeling is such an amazing commentary on where we are, and that there's so much of the things that we're involved in that are going on that are producing funny feelings inside of us. And some of the lines are like, the world at your fingertips, the ocean at your door. Right? That there's so much that's incredible, that's amazing right now, and there's so much that's not. And yes, thank you, Jeffrey. Bo Burnham, Make Happy, Inside, absolutely fantastic.
And I want to thank Renee because she found the famous emo. It's Taylor Blake. So if anyone wants to go to Hi Taylor Blake with 2 eyes,
Amazing.
You will see what Ron and I are talking about, because it just tickles you.
Yeah, totally. Totally.
It's kind of fun.
Emmanuel, don't.
It's so good. It's so good. And it looks like we already have some Bo fans, so that's good. But if anybody hasn't heard of Bo, then this is a great opportunity to go do a little bit of research. So this has been so amazing. Thank you for taking the time to have coffee with us and share all of these great tips and tricks. If people want to keep learning from you, keep picking up your wisdom, where is the best place that they can do that?
Right here on LinkedIn. I think I crank out a lot of stuff. Follow me here, but you can go to rontite.com. You go to churchstate.com, Twitter /Ron Tite, Facebook /Ron Tite. I own all the 7 letters. They're all mine.
They're all yours. I love this. Well, thank you so much, Ron. This has been an absolute treat. And I want to thank everyone for joining us this Wednesday for Coffee with Kim. It has been an amazing session. Join us next week at 1 p.m. Eastern. We'll be back here again. If you want to sign up and get those in your calendar, you can go to getcoffeewithkim.com. You can click, and these will populate on your calendar in a very fancy, easy way, because that's what we want. We want it to be easy for you guys. So thank you so much for your time and attention today. And I hope that everybody has a great rest of the week. Thank you so much, Ron.
Thanks, Kim. Thanks for having me. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for tuning in.